Hello again. Welcome to mini videos. Shorter, concise, to the point, less rambling, digression, all things I'm prone to. We're going to try this here. In rewatching the note to subscribers, the previous video, I realized that people may recoil a bit when I talked about the judgment of believers. Let's clarify that briefly. The judgment of believers, which is also referred to as the Bema seat of Christ, seems to be, according to Scripture, just simply rewards or taking away of rewards. Be careful not to lose your rewards, etc. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. That's just the rewards for the things that we do. And that has nothing to do with salvation or condemnation. Obviously, if we're believers and we make it to the Bema seat judgment, we have salvation. So that's not in jeopardy. I spent decades in the once saved, always saved doctrine church, the Calvary Chapel, EFCA, a lot of Baptist churches. It's a very prevalent doctrine in modern day. It's a very inviting doctrine. It's actually something that's the reason I went for so long is I enjoy the grace message, because I'm a person who tends to condemn myself. And the longer you sit and condemn yourself, the more time you're wasting where you could be serving the Lord, right? So it was important for me to hear that on a regular basis, and that's why I stayed. But I never did get along with, I agree with like 95% of their doctrine because it's biblical. Salvation is a gift. It's a free gift. Nobody can take it away. You cannot lose it. But then they keep railroading that to the degree that they don't need to. And in the meantime, they take away the element of man's free will and God's sovereignty, both. I don't want to beat up on that. I don't want to beat up on the church. That's not the point of this. But what I'm saying is that anytime you approach anything from Scripture, any spiritual issue whatsoever, these people with this mentality will immediately jump to their guns in defense of their doctrine. And it's not necessary. I've heard pastors talk about Matthew 25, about the parable of the 10 virgins, and twist that meaning of the Scripture all around and give some kind of circular reasoning to the whole thing in defense of the once saved, always saved doctrine, when it's not necessary. Because the parable of the 10 virgins, the best I can tell, has nothing to do with salvation or condemnation. It's the same thing with issues about the rapture. They do the same thing with the rapture issues. And the rapture is not condemnation. If you miss the rapture, you're not condemned. As far as I can tell, it's just an event. Matthew 25 ends with, I do not know you. That's different than I never knew you, which is a different parable. It's different from the parables that end with cast into outer darkness, weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's condemnation, obviously. This parable doesn't end that way. It's just an event. And just because he says, I do not know you, does not mean you're condemned. It seems to me you have a chance to know him, or for him to know you, and to be written in the Lamb's Book of Life, even though you're not invited to the wedding. I think there's a reason it's worded the way that it is. So my point is, in this video, it seems silly to me to develop a doctrine and then defend it against the Scripture. We need the truth at all costs. What are we looking for? What are all of us doing if we're not searching for things that would help us understand God's nature? He's trying to give us indicators of his nature and our relationship to him, and what are we supposed to be doing. And it's a beautiful quest, and it's a wonderful thing. If we lay aside our preconceived notions and we search for him. And I was going to run a bunch of things together as usual and make a 25-minute video, but this one I'm going to make short, and I'm going to tell you that the next one is going to be about the watchman in Ezekiel 33. It's right on the same topic. You can read that and jump to your guns and say, oh, that's Old Testament. It doesn't apply to us. You know how they do that stuff. They say, well, the book of James was written to the 12 tribes of Israel, so that doesn't apply to us. If you're missing out on the book of James, you're missing out. James is fantastic. Spiritual insights, it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite books of the whole Bible. And they say that about Hebrews too. I was writing to the Jews. We don't have to worry about that. But they'll sit and quote things out of that book. They'll quote out of James, the fervent, effective prayers of the righteous man availeth much. You can't quote out of James if you're not going to teach the whole book. I know I come across as kind of a jerk sometimes, but come on, really? James is a beautiful book. Let's set aside man's wisdom, our wisdom. I think the Bible was crafted in that way. I think God purposefully crafted the Bible in such a way that man cannot claim in his pride to have conquered the whole thing and put everything in its proper columns. And, I think he did it to confound the wise. So let's just simply read it and do it. Just read what it says and do it. And if you do that with the book of James, you can make a whole lot of progress in your spiritual life. So, the Watchman will be kind of fun. Brief, short, I promise. Okay, moving on. Okay, bye.